So, a little while back, I was giving a presentation to a client on the importance of standard operating procedures and how to set up effective SOP systems when one of the people at the meeting asked this question, and they said, well, what if our people don't use SOPs? What's the worst thing that could happen? And I had to think about this just for a moment. I said, well, yeah, what could possibly go wrong? What's the worst thing that could happen? And I came up with this. If you recognize the picture, yes, that's Chernobyl. So the Chernobyl disaster happened in 1986, and it was the worst nuclear power disaster in the history of nuclear power, and still is today. The reasons for this disaster are a little bit complicated, but definitely include the use of procedures or not using procedures. We can look at the Swiss cheese model that will help us understand just a little bit better here. So in this model, each slice of the cheese represents layered defenses or protection against bad things happening. So let's start with design. In the case of the Chernobyl reactor, there were several serious design flaws, including a positive void coefficient. The Soviet culture of the time was a culture of secrecy, not a culture of openness and sharing useful information. As a result, the training suffered, and the operators and engineers at these plants never really got good training or understanding of the design flaws in the reactor. But the one thing they had was they had procedures. They had standard operating procedures and work instructions that, had they used the existing procedures, the procedures would have protected them from those design flaws. But what happened was they intentionally decided not to use those procedures. And then, of course, we all know what happened. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Had they chosen to follow the existing procedures they had, none of us probably would have ever even heard the name Chernobyl. I have another story about people not using procedures. In this case, it was at a major brewery, and workers messed up a valve lineup and ended up dumping, I believe it was 15,000 gallons of beer on the floor. Yeah. After verifying that nobody was injured, and thankfully nobody was, I remember doing the quick mental calculation to try to determine if this was more beer than I could possibly drink in my entire life, and it was. So, we know that having good SOPs and using them can protect us from a catastrophic event. That's fine, but there are plenty of other good reasons why a good SOP system is needed. Here's some good reasons. So SOPs create that foundation for standard work. They give us consistency of process operations, including things like shift to shift, plant to plant, line to line, promoting optimal job performance, including establishing best practices, and of course, ensuring compliance with regulatory agencies. There's other good reasons too. We can use procedures as a training tool, a quick reference guide, eliminating the need to memorize things, and ultimately providing enough detail for people to perform work tasks safely and correctly. That's all well and good, but the one thing we know is that SOPs only work if people use them. Yeah, they're only useful if people actually use them. And sometimes we find in practice that they don't. Which brings up some good questions. Why don't people want to use SOPs? How do we get people to use SOPs? And finally, how do we create SOPs that people actually want to use? So it's my intent to create a new series of videos to answer all of these questions. I think that last one's going to take several videos. It involves quite a bit, but I think I'll enjoy doing it. If you can't wait or you'd like to learn more about our SOP writing services, give us a call or visit us online. Thanks for your time. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. Thanks.